right, so welcome everybody to the Delta Marketing Workshop Series. This is workshop number 1 in a 4-part series. We're going to be focusing on websites today. This series is brought to you by the Delta Protection Commission, the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy, and Visit CA Delta, which we will talk about a little bit more at the end of the workshop. So a little bit about this workshop. What we really wanted to do with this workshop series is provide kind of easy, quick, cheap ways to help Delta businesses reach their customers. We know, it's challenging enough to run a business, and then marketing on top of it can seem very daunting. And we wanted to come up with ideas and tips and steps that you can take to make it easier to reach your customers. So with this first workshop on websites, we wanted to kind of give you the tools that you could take if you wanted to build your own website. But it's also useful if you decide that you want to work with a designer so that you have enough background information to be able to successfully do that. And this is really like a 101 level workshop. So it's kind of the basics. It's meant for people that maybe don't have a website, or they no longer have a designer and they have to take over their own website. Or again, they're just kind of starting out working with a designer and they've never done this before. So again, it is kind of a basic workshop, but even for those of you who have websites already, who have a little bit more experience, you might still get something out of this. It's always nice to kind of go back to the fundamentals sometimes. And again, I just want to say that we are going to have a time for question and answers throughout. So we'll unmute you when the time comes. We'll make sure you're able to get all your questions in. Just a little bit about me. You're going to have 2 presenters today. I'm Stacy Hayden, Information Officer with the Delta Protection Commission. I started designing websites a long time ago, way back in 1997, and I've never stopped. I've been doing it pretty much every day, one way or another, ever since 1997. And I'm really a web designer and a graphic designer by trade. I did run my own full-scale marketing business for 10 years before I came to the state about 6.5 years ago. I've been doing communications in the state that whole time. So I do have, quite a bit of experience and background in developing websites from the ground up in many different ways for many different kinds of businesses and organizations. Our other presenter today is Elisa, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Elisa Harrop. I'm the communications analyst at the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy. I've been there about 2.5 years now. And before that, my background was in marketing and fundraising for a few different nonprofits.
Great, thank you. All right, so our agenda today, just to give you a quick overview, we're just going to talk super briefly about the benefits of having a website. It's pretty straightforward. We'll talk about developing written and visual content. We'll talk about design and layout. We're going to show some examples of some Delta websites that really do a good job capturing these elements. We'll have a Q&A session after that. Then Elisa's going to talk about domains, hosting, and web builders. We'll have a Q&A after that. And then we're going to do some wrap up. We'll talk about the next workshops coming up, and we're going to talk a little bit about Visit CA Delta as well. So let's jump into it. There are so many benefits to website, of course, a lot more than 4. But the first one is really, you need to be where your customers are, and they're not always in front of your store, right? Only 11% of Americans don't use the internet. I mean, the vast majority of people in the United States are online across all demographics, including all income levels. So you want to be where they are, and they are searching for you. They are searching for your services. They are searching for your products online, and having a website really helps to extend your reach. Of course, there's so many different platforms and websites that you can be on for your business. If you have an Airbnb, you can be on Airbnb. A lot of people in the Delta, I've noticed, are just on Facebook, for instance, versus having a website. There are benefits to being, on Facebook, but not as many people use social media as people use search engines. And so when you limit yourself to kind of one area like that, you may not be reaching as many people as you could be. It also kind of creates a hub having a website as well. And of course, having a website is really about sharing your products and services, but it's not just that. A website is really a great opportunity to tell your story. When people spend money with a business, they like to feel connected to that business, and a website is a huge help in that. And a website lends to credibility. It really shows that you're taking your business seriously and you're actively engaged with your business. Again, there are many other benefits, but I just want to remind people that even though there are many avenues online to share your business, don't sidestep having your own website. So let's talk about how to do that. And we're going to talk first about written and visual content. What I want to do here is just remind you that you don't have to be overwhelmed at the idea of developing a website. You don't have to start out with all the information and 20 different pages on your website. You can start minimally and be incredibly effective at having a website to reach your business goals. And the goal of a website to reach your business goals is to make sure you're clearly and easily getting information to your customers, your potential customers, that in seconds, because people go to a website and they look at everything and take it in just mere seconds, that you're able to capture their attention, and that the information that you're sharing, both visually and with your written content, is easy to find on your website, easy to find quickly, and also easy to understand. So when we talk about building a website, again, whether you're doing this completely on your own or you have help or you're starting out with a web designer, one of the first things that I recommend that you do is start thinking about your content. Don't worry about the technology and the design and all of those things first. Really sitting down and thinking about what your business is, what you need to say on the website, what you want to say on your website, what you need to share about your services or your products, whether you have a storefront or you're fully online as an e-commerce site. You want to make sure you're sharing the right information with your customers. And there's kind of two parts to the type of information that you're going to be sharing with your customers, what they are specifically looking for. So the first thing is the basics: location, hours, pricing, contact information. That seems obvious, but I'm sure all of you have gone to websites where it's really hard to find even that basic information. So if you can get onto your website and find that information quickly, that is how you're going to initially capture your customers. That is what they want to find out right away. That's what they're looking for in the first few seconds. Some of this, may not necessarily be pertinent to your particular business. For instance, pricing can be great to have on a website. But if your prices change a lot, or if they're highly variable, or maybe if you're selling, very, very high-end products, it might not make sense to have pricing on your website. But typically, I recommend for most businesses that they do. Anytime you have a customer coming to your website looking for information and they see something like fill out this form for a quote or call us for more information, you really possibly have a chance of losing that person right off the bat. So if you can offer as much of that basic information quickly and easily on your website, you're more likely to keep that customer engaged to the second aspect of what they're looking for from your content on your website, and that's the experience factor. So when you're writing out your content for your web page and you're putting in the basics, what are your products, what are your services, what do, you also want to be thinking about, well, how is this product or service going to make your customer feel? That's what people want to know. That's what advertising is all about, right? Drink Pepsi, you'll have joy. Advertising is based around feeling. And so if you can capture that experience factor, whether it's, showcasing yourself as a trusted, reputable source for buying boats in the Delta, or that wonderful feeling of relaxation when you stay at the hotel, or you'll feel like you're on vacation when you come visit our winery. If you can capture that kind of feeling, that experience factor, that's going to capture your customers' attention. One thing you don't need to do when it comes to the basics or even the experience factor is write too much about it. Okay? Keep it simple. Again, we're talking mere seconds to capture your customer's attention. So what I recommend is you really write in what's called plain language. You can look up plain language online. There's a lot of helpful information, but it's really just clear, direct language at a 6th grade reading level. You're not trying to sound too smart. You're not trying to make things, complicated. You just want it quick and easy. That's what you're always going for when you're developing your website, is getting the information out quick and easy. And this is especially true when you're doing and setting up your navigation menu. If you have multiple pages on your website, because sometimes people like to get creative in how they do their links and their navigation menus. But again, you have to remember, people want things quickly. So it's perfectly good to have homepage, about page, contact, services. You don't have to get creative when it comes to those kinds of things, because it's going to just probably trip up your customers when they're looking for something quickly. So simple writing, meeting the basics, and trying to get to the experience factor. And there's other ways to get to the experience factor that I'll talk about a little bit more as we go through. Now, I talked about things like location, hours, pricing. Of course, businesses don't stay static. Things change, location, or not locations necessarily very often, but certainly hours and pricing changes, hopefully not too often for your business. But one of the most important things about a website, and why it can also be helpful to keep your website simpler, is you don't want to let it get outdated. It is so incredibly important to make sure that the information you have on your website is correct. The last thing you want is having somebody drive an hour away from San Francisco to Walnut Grove. I think it takes longer than that, only to find out that the business actually isn't open at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays anymore, or that the pricing is very different. So if you can't have content on your website that you're able to stay on top of, either because you're too busy, or maybe working on the website's a little bit too challenging for you, or your web designer's on vacation, it's really better to just not even have that information on your website. But again, it's so important. Having a website that's updated and having the basics and having the experience factor really should be a top goal. And it doesn't have to take long. I'll give some examples of some Delta websites that do really good jobs with this. And I was able to talk to some of those business owners and how long it takes to actually keep their websites updated. And sometimes the time is minimal. Another recommendation for sharing content on your website that's helpful is sharing your awards and accolades. If you have reviews, if you won Best of the Delta, which is something we'll talk about later as well, any opportunity that shows your reputability is a great thing to add to your website. So content, of course, on a website isn't just written content. You also have the actual design of the website, which can show the experience factor as well, but we're going to stick to some other aspects of content itself, and one of those is photos. Photos are really that opportunity to tell the story about your business and to give your audience that experience factor feeling, right? What is the experience they're going to have with your product or service? So when you're adding photos to your website, one, they need to be quality photos. Having blurry photos on your website does diminish your website. It is distracting to your audience, your customers. It does kind of take away from the credibility of your business as well. But you can take great photos on your iPhone, your Android, and get those right up online. And when you're taking photos, it really should be of your services, of your business location, of the products that you have, and give a kind of a sense of feeling. For instance, instead of just showing a product, you could show someone interacting with that product, showing people experiencing your place of business. That's just, it's what's going to help connect your customers to you and make them want to feel and have that same experience. Another helpful piece of content on a website as you're marketing your business is kind of marketing the overall experience. The Delta is like an amazing place, right? You all know this. I believe most of you that are on here are from the Delta or work in the Delta. You have such a big opportunity here to create an overall experience factor opportunity, where if you talk a little bit about your business in relation to the Delta, a little bit about the Delta, then people can kind of look at it, especially if they live out of town, and think, oh, you know, I can go shopping at this great little store because this great little store looks awesome. I can tell from the photos and the great content they have on their website. But wow, oh, it's on this main street in this cute little town, and wow, there's these other stores I can go to. And now they're drawn in not just to your business, but they're drawn into the whole location, and the chance of them now coming out to your business is going to be much greater. So again, if you're running just an online business, some of this may not pertain to you. A lot of this is focused though towards our business owners who are operating within the Delta. Another thing you can do to create the experience factor, but also help out other businesses, which in turn will hopefully help out you as well, is to mention other businesses that are around you or that you work with or somehow relate to your products and services. And that gives an opportunity for other people to kind of get a bigger picture of what's going on, but it also gives an opportunity for those businesses to hopefully promote you as well. So content's a big topic. And my biggest piece of advice to you is simply to start with the basics and get the feel for the experience factor going. You don't have to have multiple pages. You don't have to have lots of content, especially if you're just starting. If you're already feeling overwhelmed with website development and marketing, you can absolutely have kind of an effective website with the basics and be well ahead of where you were without a website. Another important topic around content that I wanted to talk about is search engine optimization, which we can have a whole workshop on in and of itself. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what search engine optimization is. And that is, if you go on Google and you search for fishing in the Delta, Google has some algorithms that's going to scan all of the websites and look for those kinds of terms, those keywords or keyword phrases. And you can capitalize on keywords and keyword phrases. So when people are searching Google to find businesses, hopefully yours is the one that pops up. They should be fairly specific to your business, but also your location. Because if you just search up boat sales and you're in Sacramento, for instance, I live in Sacramento, so that'll probably come up a bit. Google kind of knows most likely that I'm in Sacramento. It'll kind of bring boat sales close to me. But maybe somebody is looking specifically for boat sales near the Delta, or they want to do rentals in the Delta, boat rentals in the Delta. You could have Isleton boat rentals. And if you consider that one of your keyword terms, and you use that in the right ways in your content on your website, it's more likely that the search engines will place you higher up in the search listings. How to use keywords? There's a lot of ways to use keywords, but again, we're trying to keep this simple. One of the ways is to utilize them in your headers and add them into the kind of beginning parts of the first paragraphs on your page. What you don't want to do is use them too often. I'm sure many of you have gone to a website and you've seen Stockton, boat rentals. We have Stockton boat rentals. welcome to Stockton Boat Rentals, and it's just very, very repetitive because it's obvious that they're trying to get that search engine ranking. That isn't going to help with your search engine rankings. It's also going to distract your customers from that clear, quick information that they are trying to actually get from your website. So do use keywords and keyword phrases, but use them sparingly and write for people, not for algorithms. So if you take the time to learn about search engine optimization, your first initial instinct is to want to write for those algorithms. But again, it's not going to help you. So always write for people. But do pick a few keyword terms that make the most sense for your business. Keep it local, like Sacramento River Marina, Isleton Restaurant, things of that nature. Not as many people search for things like restaurants in the Delta. They don't typically search for businesses in the Delta in that manner. I've run a lot of keyword searches on that through Google to see like how people are actually searching for Delta businesses. And what I found is they're typically searching more local, town specific, or along the river. And then the other thing is don't deceive. So I did mention don't overdo it, but definitely don't use keywords just to try to get people to come to your site for other things because you think it might, get people's attention on Google or whatever the search engine is that people might be using. It will count against you. Algorithms are pretty smart that way. All right, so you have the basics of content. I'm going to reiterate again. I'm going to reiterate this through a lot of this workshop is don't be overwhelmed. Start simply. Simpler than you even think you need to start. You can always build over that. You can always get input from other people. You can always develop over time. But you want a website up and you want it up now because you need one. Okay. And the same thing goes for design and layout. So this is a great quote. This is by Coco Chanel. She said, before you leave the house, look in the mirror and take one thing off. I just love that. It is really good fashion advice, but in a way, it's incredible design advice. I mean, really, again and again and again, less is more. Let's take a look at what that can look like. So branding. Logos are super great. I'm a designer. I love logos and I love branding. And you may have a logo, you may have branding, you may not. And for those of you who don't have branding and you feel like you have to pay someone to get that going in order for you to even have a website or to have other marketing materials, it hurts me a little bit, but I'm here to tell you that you don't. You absolutely don't. You can start out with just your business name and a simple font. Pick 2 to 4 colors and use those colors consistently. And that's going to be good enough branding to get you going on getting a website redesigned or getting a website started, even getting some of your other marketing materials together as well. I do want to talk a little bit about how to search for colors. So I have this helpful tool. I'm going to change my screen here a little bit, called the Color Analyzer. It does a few things. The link is here and it downloads to your desktop. I'm just going to bring that up. This tool is really helpful for a few things. Can everybody see the Color Analyzer over the PowerPoint? Great, okay. So one, it helps you find colors that you like and it'll give you what's called the hex color code. And that hex color code is what you'll be able to use to change the colors on whatever web design platform you're utilizing. Or if you're working with a designer, you can give them the hex color code and they can run with it. The other thing that this color contrast analyzer does is it will let you know whether or not the colors are like easily visible to people, because sometimes people will layer colors over pictures or other colors, and it makes it really hard to read. And we want, again, information to be easy to find and easy to understand. And your design and your color theme is going to make a big difference in whether or not that's actually the case. So when you're looking for those 2 to 4 colors to just do simple branding for your website, there's a few ways that you can go about that. One is you can just look up color palettes right online. I just searched color palettes on Google. There's a whole group of color palettes here. You can find one you like, pick 2 to 4 colors and run with those colors. There's also like color palette generators and things like that that you can search for online that will help you pick colors as well. Usually when I'm designing something, I just like to come here and just kind of look at pretty colors together, what looks good to my eye. And then once I've found the colors that I like, if they don't already have the hex color code, like there's one here that already has that for you, you can use this color analyzer to get that information that you'll need for designing your website. So you would just take the eyedropper tool here and you can click on the color, and there it is. That is the code you're going to need if you want, for instance, a header to be this yellow color. Now, the other great thing I mentioned is it helps people figure out whether or not the color contrast is going to work. So if you wanted this yellow color as your text and you wanted it over this green background, you can, one, see what it looks like. Doesn't look that great. But you can also see down here that it failed contrast. And that pretty much will tell you if people can easily read the text online. And it'll tell you if you kind of only need to worry about this minimum. I wouldn't worry about the rest down here, but it will tell you if it works for regular text. Sometimes it won't work for regular text, but it will work for large text, which is like 18 points or over. Usually I recommend that it passes both to use it regardless of the text size. This is one of many tools that are out there that can help you. So you pick your 2 to 4 colors and you can use them just consistently throughout your website. And you don't have to worry about paying the extra money to get your whole business branded by a designer. And maybe in the future, you'll be able to do that. But I'd rather see you get your website up and going now than worry about blockages like branding. All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint. All right, so another aspect of color, white space is good space. There are 2 aspects to this. One, the color white is great. It's a great background. You do not have to have colored backgrounds, pictured backgrounds, complicated backgrounds. White background is a way to go. It's going to be the easiest way for people to get that clear, quick information from your website that you're trying to get to them. The other aspect of white space is the space part, is you don't have to fill up every aspect of the browser on your website. It's okay to have room to breathe a little bit, because if your website's too busy, it's just going to be distracting. So white space is good space. Have a white background. Don't feel the need to fill up everything when you're designing a web page. My next design and layout tip is about fonts. So we do recommend using what's called sans serif versus serif. Serif fonts have kind of the little embellishments here at the end and beginning of the words. These are very traditional fonts that are used, like Times New Roman is a serif font. Generally, we recommend that you avoid serif fonts and you focus fully on using sans serif fonts. Serif fonts are just really hard to read on the web, especially in small print. So if people are on their phones, it's really challenging to read serif fonts. So you can stick with sans serif, and you want to use sizing consistently. Have you ever gone to a web page and they have all kinds of different text all over, different sizes, bold, italics, underline, it's all over the place, right? You want to use clean, simple, consistent fonts. Have headers that are all the same size. Keep your regular text at a minimum of 12 point, keep that consistent. So you just want to try to not be all over the place, or simplifying, simplifying, simplifying. So as mentioned, that bold, italic, and underline, use that sparingly as well. Only use it when you really want and need to capture attention on a very specific thing. If you do that for half the things on your page, people aren't going to know what they need to draw their eye to first. And as I mentioned, when you're designing your first website, or you're redesigning, or you don't have, enough funds for a designer to create a very big website from the start, how many pages should you start with? 20? You could start with one. One page is great. Again, it's kind of what I like to call minimum effective dose. You could have all the information a customer is looking for on one page. And sometimes, depending on what your business is and the information you're sharing, that's actually better than having multiple pages just for the sake of having multiple pages. You don't need to have a contact link in the nav bar just to have 4 lines of contact text. People don't like to click links anyway. They really don't. Every time you make somebody click a link to go somewhere else, you have an opportunity to lose them. So if you're building out a simple page and you have simple information, you're focusing on those basics, you can and maybe even should get it right on that single page. Another aspect of website design and layout is mobile friendly. A lot of websites now, luckily, when you go to build your website on a design platform, which Elise is going to talk a little bit more about in a little bit, they're usually set up so they're automatically mobile friendly. Here's the thing, probably 80 to 90% of the people looking at your web page now are going to be looking at it on their phone. So making sure that your website is mobile friendly is absolutely imperative these days. If you have a website now, that's probably where your biggest priority should be, is making sure that you are getting your website redesigned on a platform that is mobile friendly. So I'd rather see you focus on that than building out a bigger, better site based off of your desktop site. I'd rather see you take it all down and start fresh with a simpler mobile-friendly website before building out your non-mobile friendly website. All right, I keep saying it, I'm going to keep saying it. Simple, clean, easy to read, easy to understand. This is what I want you to remember. This is the one thing I really, really want you to take away when it comes to building your website, is avoid the sparkly unicorn. Like, what is the sparkly unicorn? It is not actually a sparkly unicorn. It is just anything that distracts your customer away from the vital information that they are looking for. And unfortunately, this is what people who don't, how do I say this, like amateur designers, people who aren't used to designing, they tend to add in the sparkly unicorn. It's fun. They want to feel like they're being effective. They found out, how to build something that looks really neat. But you really need to ask yourself, is this thing I'm about to add to my website going to help my customer get the information they are looking for? Or is it just going to distract them? So you could avoid things like putting stroke weights around fonts, like you can see in this yellow hard to read text, doing lots of drop shadows, text that just isn't very readable, adding in graphics that you don't need to add. It's okay to use a little bit of graphics to help with that experience feel, but you really need to ask yourself if the graphic is actually helping you reach your goal versus just trying to make your website have more pizzazz, because that's a very common thing to do. So avoid too many graphics. distracting backgrounds, animated graphics, too much text. You don't need to add things just to add things. Avoiding those confusing navigation labels and links, getting too creative with those kinds of things. All of those are sparkly unicorns you want to avoid. So that's the thing you can always ask yourself. Is this a sparkly unicorn or is this vital information? Stock photos can be helpful. I recommend generally to not use stock photos. If you have an opportunity to take pictures of your business, that's really where you want to spend your focus. Because stock photos, you know, they're not your business, right? They're not your product, they're not your services, they're not your customers. They tend to just kind of look like an afterthought. So everything you add to your website, even if it's a very minimal website, should have purpose. Don't be this. All right, let's look over a few examples. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bartlett's website, Sacramento River Cruise, Manny Barzeria, and Tiki Lagoon Resort and Marina. And these are all great. There's a lot of great websites in the Delta. It was actually pretty hard to choose, but I chose these for a few specific reasons. I'm going to take you over to those now. So the first one is the Bartlett. And the thing that I loved about the Bartlett right from the start is just, again, it's clean, it's simple, it hits almost everything that I talked about, both content-wise and design-wise. It has a simple, clean white background. It's one page for the most part, the main information anyway. You know right away what it is, your place to stay in the Delta. You have an action item, book now. You have a short about us that gives you a good feel for the area that it's located in. It gives a little bit of history. It gives you that sense of place, a little bit of that experience factor. It shows the rates. I know right away, love that, how much I'm going to be spending. I don't have to now get on the phone and call them to figure that out and take that next step. Their photo gallery actually has pictures of their location. It has the location, it has the contact information, right? So this is a very simple website, but this is an incredibly effective website. It meets all the needs for what a potential customer is looking for. And I did get a chance to talk to Becky Henham from the Bartlett, who actually was able to do this on her own. So she used GoDaddy. We're going to talk about a few platforms, and I do want to mention that we don't endorse any of these platforms. They're just resources for you to look up and research on your own. So she used GoDaddy. She bought her domain from GoDaddy, and she got hosting from GoDaddy, and then she used a website builder. So website builders are really nice. Almost anybody can use them. They're very user-friendly now. And she was able to create this website, she said, in just about 2 hours. And she's done, right? And now she has this great website that people can get information quickly from. She also said that the cost for her to do this whole website herself was about $150 for the year. So the cost was very minimal for her. And they don't have a lot of changes except for like pricing, but I don't think they change that too often. So she says she never really has to really update this very often. So this is an example of just kind of a static site that you can build and for the most part be done with. And it'll be incredibly useful to your other marketing that you do either in print or through social media or whatever other channels you may use for marketing. And of course, people will be able to find, if they're looking up where to stay in the Delta, they'll be able to easily find the Bartlett on a search engine. Our next example is Sacramento River Cruise. Same kind of thing here, just clean website, white background. There's not a lot going on. We have pictures right from the start of the business and also of the place, of the people having fun. There's that experience factor, right? That's something you're trying to capture. Oh, look at that great food, right? So you can feel what it would be like to be out here on this boat. They were able to capture that, but they were also able to capture the basics really quickly and easily. All tours are private. Gift cards available, open 7 days a week. Here's the phone number right at the top. They do have a video. Video is amazing, but we're not at video yet, right? We're just trying to get our website up and going, but video is a wonderful thing to think about in the future. Maybe we'll have another workshop on that as well. Experiences, right? You're going to experience something when you're out here. They have all of the details of their trips. They have the prices, they have the dates and times. Everything's here. You can book easily, quickly. You know what's going on. You can find the information. I talked to Emil, so he does this website on Squarespace. And his brother is actually a web designer, so he does have help, but he is able to update, Emil's able to update this himself. He's the owner. As needed. So again, it's a very user-friendly platform option. And they spend about 2 to 6 hours a month updating the website, depending on what's going on. You can see they had a lot more information, around their scheduling and things like that. So it's more likely that they would need to update a little bit more often. But if you are a busy business person, again, you can build your website so you don't have to update it so much, but you kind of have to weigh out like how important is your time versus how important it is getting the information to your customers via your website. They do have multiple pages, which is great, but they could honestly have dropped these pages and been just as effective with just this information. So another great example of what a one-page or small website can be useful for. The next one is Manny's Barzeria. Barzeria? I feel like I always pronounce that wrong. It's great if you haven't been there. So quickly, right at the top, navigation, simple, right? Home, about, menu. If you have a restaurant, that's one of the first things people are looking for. So quick and easy. It's not hidden underneath anything. You can get there right away. And another thing that I really love, this is a video, but you can do this in other ways, either through writing or through photographs. But this video actually, and I'm not going to play it because of bandwidth, but it kind of starts out with an overview of the Delta and starts to zoom in down Main Street and to their storefronts. They're immediately capturing like their place within the Delta. So that feeling, that experience. You're going to be able to draw people to your restaurant or your business if you can create that whole experience versus just coming to your great products and services. And then again, you have contact us, ordering online, photos, contact information, nothing's hidden. It's all here. Maps are easy to add. There's usually things called widgets on platforms. It's not absolutely necessary, but they're pretty easy to add. The hours are right here. I don't have to click another navigation tab to go there. So again, all examples of just quick, easy, simple information. And the last one I want to show you is a little bit more of a complex website. It's beautiful though, and that's Tiki Lagoon. And so you can see there's no white background, but the colors are balanced. The words are easy to read. You can find the information quickly. And one thing I didn't address because I was coming to this in content was action words and buttons and links. Because what you want is your customers to do something, right? You want them to reserve marina now, reserve RV park now, buy this product, make this reservation, come see us today. Create something that kind of immediacy through those action terms that can be really helpful on your website. All right. Okay, so I'm going to open up some Q&A. If you're on mute, you can unmute yourself doing *6 if you're just on the phone. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself on Zoom. You can also raise your hand. If you're on the phone doing *9 or via Zoom, you can raise your hand as well. And I know this was, kind of high level overview and basics, but I'm happy to answer any questions that someone might have. All right. But if you think of something as we go through, we're going to have another question and answer period. And of course, you can always reach out to us after as well.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
When you're building the website and you want to have a place where people can make a purchase, pay for something on the site, how do you do that?
That's a great question. And actually, Elisa is going to talk a little bit about your website platforms and e-commerce platforms that are available, because there is a lot of ways to do that. There are platforms out there that are available specifically for that. They're like integrated with the website design and integrated with credit card processing. But there's other ways to do it as well, where you just have like a PayPal account and a button with PayPal linked onto your website. So there's a few different ways to do that, but I'm going to let Elisa talk about that a little bit more in just a minute or so. It's a great question. Does anybody else have questions? All right. So I'm going to go ahead then and turn it over to Elisa. And she is going to talk a little bit more. I keep saying start this from the beginning. She's going to talk about, sorry about that, domains and hosting.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. So purchasing your domain name and selecting a platform to actually host and build your website is a basic and kind of the more technical, less fun than the sparkly unicorn conversation. But it's really essential to creating and managing your online presence. So on the next slide, we're going to first talk about domain name registration and website hosting. So what a domain name is that's the web address used to access your website. So it's what would be in a link if someone was going to click a link to your site, or it's what they would type into the browser on the internet page in order to get there. So when choosing your domain name, you want to make sure it's something that's easily identified and remembered, not too long, not too complicated, and pertinent to your business. When Stacy was showing the example from the Bartlett, you may have noticed that their domain name was www.thedeltabartlett.com. And that was probably a great choice for them because even though their name may or may not have the word Delta in it, if there's other hotels called the Bartlett, then people who are looking for them immediately know just by that URL that they've got the right one. It's the Delta Bartlett. Yeah, and then that's really great just to help people not get confused, because you want people will get to your site easier if they can find you easier. Also, some of the domain names that might be considered more popular may be more expensive to purchase. So you may have to come up with a few different options, something like that, like adding in the word Delta if perhaps your first choice was too pricey. The first step is you want to consider if you simply want to purchase your domain name and manage your website on a separate platform, or maybe have someone else manage your website for you, or if you want to register your domain name and manage your site all in one place. There's a lot of platforms now that allow you to purchase your domain name, and then you can also use their website building tools, and they offer lots of add-ons for an additional cost right there on their platform. Add-ons could include email hosting so that you can have an email address that matches the URL of your website, email marketing services so you can capture and use email addresses from visitors to your site, and then also booking and e-commerce platforms for online reservation or online sales. So that's something too. I'm going to loop back to that question of the e-commerce when we show some resources a little bit later. Sometimes if you purchase your domain name with your web hosting plan, you might get a better deal than doing it separately, but it could be beneficial to do it separately, especially if you're planning to have a web designer build your site for you and you just want to purchase the domain for them to get started. Your yearly cost for your domain name will depend on the platform you use to buy it and the name you select. Some platforms even have different prices depending upon if you end your name in .com or .net. It's usually around $10 to $20 per year. And if you combine the domain name with your hosting platform, it can be around $20 to $150 a year. Depending on your plan, your domain name registration will need to be renewed after a certain amount of time. The renewals are often slightly more expensive than your initial plan. So when you're registering your domain name, you want to make sure to use an active email address. That way you receive critical renewal updates. And if you're working with a web designer, you want to make sure that you always have access to the account information in case for some reason you stop working with them or something. That way you can make sure you renew it yourself. The reason you have to renew your domain name registration and your hosting is because if you don't, someone else may purchase the domain name and then almost steal your name from under you. And if you don't renew your hosting on time, you may lose your entire website and have to start over. So it's definitely important to keep a calendar and make sure you know when your renewals are coming up and you get it done on time. Another reason it's important to keep a calendar is so you can know what your timeline is if there's potentially a scam. Unfortunately, there's a lot of scammers out there that will pretend to be your domain hosting platform and they'll ask you for a payment. So if you ever get something like that and it's not within the timeline you expected, you should reach out directly to your domain name registration platform and just ask them if it was a legit payment request or not. So the other half of this is the website builders on the next slide. As I mentioned on the last slide, the platform you use to build your website can be the same or separate as the platform you use to purchase your domain name registration. So the website builder is where you're actually going to create the design elements that Stacy was talking about, and you'll add your own information and photos. So there's a lot of options now for free and low cost website builders. Some of the ones are listed there, including WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. When you're deciding between the different platforms, things you might consider are price, the ease of use, availability of pre-designed templates if you're not too familiar with design, customer service availability, and then the integration of additional elements, just like those input forms for emails or online reservations. Some website builders, Squarespace is one specifically on here, and there's a few more that I'll provide in a minute, are specifically tailored toward e-commerce. So if you are looking to host sales on your website, that might be a nice one to look into. And you definitely want to consider your website goals when you're selecting which platform you use. As your website grows and becomes more advanced, you may find yourself looking for more programs to add elements like graphic design, photography, and widgets. A widget is, Stacy mentioned, where on one of the sites it had a map. And so they probably just installed a widget, which is almost like an app on your phone, kind of, if you think of it that way. So it's like a little app within your website where it'll load certain data for you. So there's a lot of programs to get some of those free and low cost elements. And you can make them separately and then upload them to your website. Just remember, as Stacy mentioned, you only want to use stock photos when it's absolutely necessary. So we've created a resources attachment, and I'm not sure if Stacy's able to pull that up. We're more than happy to send this out to everybody after the workshop. But this document right here, this is what it looks like. So this outlines some of the different programs that you might look into. Just as Stacy said, we are not endorsing these programs. They're just a resource for you to research and hopefully a good place to get you started. So then to answer that e-commerce question again specifically, there's some noted on there under e-commerce that might be good places to look into for online sales. So that is it on domains and hosting, unless there's any questions.
Again, you can either raise your hand in Zoom or you can go ahead and just unmute yourself. I know that if you've never done this before, some of this still sounds maybe like some gibberish, and I totally understand that. But just kind of recommend checking out that resource that list that Elisa put together. It is a really good starting point. And if you just keep it in your mind to start simply, you're going to be a lot better off. Just do one step at a time. Elisa mentioned something that really stood out to me, and that was to make sure that you have access to your accounts. Your domain name and your web hosting and page builder may all be under something like GoDaddy. They may be set up in different spots depending on how you set it up, but you want to have access to all of that. And that's also imperative, even if, and especially if you hire a web designer as well. I can't tell you how often I've had clients come to me when I was working as a web designer who had a website with a designer, and the designer like went and sailed the Caribbean for 3 months, and they were going to keep it updated, but it didn't happen. Things like that happen, and or things just aren't working out with your web designer, and so you want to make sure that you have full access to your account. So when you are working with a web designer, if you decide to go that route, make sure that they know that that's really important to you. You do have those logins and you do have access just in case something happens. It happens a lot. But I mean, even if you're doing it yourself, it's easy to lose those things. So a lot of people end up having to rebuild due to not being able to access their accounts, unfortunately. All right. Before we move on, I just want to open up. Yes, Andrea.
On Squarespace, if you use Squarespace and you decide to leave it, can you bring your website, or do they just dissolve it and you have to build a new one?
With Squarespace, you would be building on their platform. So you would be building a new site on their platform, and it's all very integrated.
So if I left their platform for whatever reason, I'd have to build a new website.
You would, yes.
And I just want to piggyback on that. So you would still probably, depending upon if you purchased your domain through Squarespace or purchased it elsewhere, you might still own your name. You just wouldn't have your actual site. You'd have to look.
Okay, so I could keep the name if I purchased
Potentially.
it separately.
If you purchased it separately, absolutely, yeah.
But
And
I
then
can
if you
put it on Squarespace.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought I had to buy the name through Squarespace.
No, that's one nice thing about domain name registration is you can buy it from anywhere and use it anywhere, and you can transfer it too. So say you did buy it on GoDaddy, and you decide, like a lot of people have, that they don't like GoDaddy for whatever reason. You can actually transfer that domain name to another registrar, like one-to-one, which also registers domain names and provides website hosting. You can have a domain name registered with GoDaddy and have your hosting over at One-on-One or some other hosting platform. You can have them in the same place. So that is something I found that people beginning to do this process do get confused about, is that hosting and domain name registration are completely separate things, and you do need both, but they are separate and they can be on different platforms.
But if I purchase my domain name through Square, can I transfer it to someplace else?
Yes, any place that you purchase a domain name, you're always able to transfer to somewhere else, to another registrar.
Okay.
Yeah. But you could also leave it there and just move your hosting somewhere else if you wanted to also.
Okay. Interesting.
Any other questions?
Just wanted to kind of point out a few questions in the chat, if you don't mind. So Stacy, we got everyone's email address right from the Zoom?
Yes, everybody on here is registered, so we do have their email addresses. So we'll be able to send out both these slides and also the resource list to you after this. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead.
A question, Stacy? Yeah, I'm curious. Is it a good idea or a bad idea in general to use generic photos?
Yeah, so I did kind of mention that. So I mentioned stock photos, and I realize not everybody may not even know what a stock photo is. Stock photo is a generic photo that you can usually purchase off of the internet or get for free. Just, a person on the phone or a landscape, whatever it may be, there's a stock photo for everything out there. And I don't recommend using generic photos if at all possible. You might find a reason to or have a use for one, but your focus when utilizing photos, again, for your website or any marketing piece, you're always trying to convey information about your business. And so photos are your content, just like the written part is your content. So it really should be used to convey the aspects of your business, either basic information, but again, they're really useful for conveying that experience factor, that feeling of what it's like to utilize your services or products, be at your location, etc. So don't use generic photos, use photos of your business, of your services, people interacting with your services, of your products. And it's nice to have a mix too, to have, detailed, photos of small details, as well as kind of overall vantage point photos, and kind of mix it up. Photos with people in them are great. That's something, we wish we could do a little bit more of. Do make sure that when you use photos of people, though, that you have gotten their permission to use the photo. It's nice to have like a waiver release form. Honestly, a simple email that you keep that shows them agreeing to the use of their likeness in your photo on your website or whatever it may be probably will be good enough. But I'm not a lawyer, so don't take that verbatim. So yeah, so generic photos, probably aren't going to help you convey what your business is all about to your customers. Thank you for that question. Did that help? All right. Anything else? We got a little bit of time. I have a few more things to cover, but we got plenty of time. Feel free to think of some more questions. We can always come back towards the end. Okay, so this is the first in a series of marketing workshops. The rest of our workshops that are coming up are all going to be about a month out. What our hope was that would give you enough time to kind of take some of these like basic concepts and ideas and try to get them implemented. Get that first page of your website up. Make some, take a look if you have a current website and see if there's something that you learned today. Even changing one or two things could have a huge impact on how your potential customers are relating to your business on your website. So either start it or take a look and see what you can implement so that it's ready for the next one, which is on May 27th. And that's when we're going to be talking about social media, a lot of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we'll be talking about the same kind of stuff, how to, put the right kind of content out there, why those things are important. And again, how to use them quickly, simply, easily. You can do a lot. You can build big websites. You can have massive social media campaigns. You can be on it 24/7. I know I've been doing marketing for a long, long time. But again, you don't have to be effective. You can just focus on few key aspects. You're going to be way ahead of the game. Then on June 24th, we're going to have an in-person marketing workshop. We're going to talk about, location beautification, making your storefront welcoming, people being able to quickly see what you're offering in your physical storefront, talking about signage, talking about things like repeat customer programs, add-on offerings, rounding out your offerings in your business. And I'll give you just a quick example of what I mean by that. I was in McBrewery in Isleton, and their cafe, and I got some food. And they had, other things in there that, really showcased like the Delta. And so it felt like this hub. I wasn't just going there for a sandwich. I was also learning about the Delta and artists in the Delta and looking at art. And they had some other things to sell. And it was kind of this full, well-rounded experience. It's good to focus on your product and services. But when you're dealing, especially if you're dealing with any kind of tourism or recreation, having that kind of like grander picture of where you're located for your customers, can make them feel like a connection. So now when they think about going to get a sandwich, next time they're in aisle 10, they're going to think about this kind of hub, right? So again, this may not pertain to every business, but those are just a few kinds of things that we're going to talk about for in-person marketing. On July 29th, it's going to be just like a this and that. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. Deal with your, not dealing with, joining. We're going to have a few talk. It's going to be great. Your business chambers that are local, like the Delta Chamber, Alton Chamber, Rio Vista Chamber. We're going to talk about guerrilla marketing, just getting out there doing some street marketing, fun things, free things, utilizing email campaigns, listing directories. We'll talk a little bit about search engines and search engine optimization a little bit more as well. So as I mentioned, when it comes to content, it can be really useful to set your business within its place. And for most of you, that place is the Delta, which is, again, wonderful and amazing. We all love it. We want to share it. And Visit CA Delta is a great opportunity to do that. You can link to Visit CA Delta on your website to kind of give people a feel of the many other things that they can do and experience in the Delta. Also, if you have a business in the Delta, you can go check out Visit CA Delta and look through our listings to make sure that your business is on our listing pages. And if not, you can contact us to make sure we get it on there. We'll do that for you. We also have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can interact with us on there. We'll be talking about interacting with other pages in our social media workshop next month, but you can start doing that now if you have a Facebook page. And if you don't, you can just check it out and see what there is to see. We share a lot of great information on there. Just to give you an overview, Visit CA Delta is a platform for spreading awareness of the California Delta as a world-class tourist destination. It's a place for people, homes, and businesses filled with human history, cultural richness, and diversity. And we want to make sure the world knows that. We want them to come down and experience all the great things that Delta has to offer, including your business. It is an effort through the Delta Marketing Task Force. The Delta Marketing Task Force is a group of Delta organizations, businesses, and residents that provide direction for the Visit CA Delta website, our social media channels, and other marketing opportunities that we're involved in as well. The task force usually meets 1 to 3 times a year, and this is really good timing for this workshop because we're hoping you, as a business leader in the Delta, will consider joining the Delta Marketing Task Force and help kind of drive some of these initiatives forward. We'd love to hear feedback from you on this workshop so we can make the next ones better. This is our first one like this, so we're always happy to take feedback and make changes as we go and make sure we're meeting needs. Again, knowing this is kind of a basic overview, you could have input like maybe we do an advanced level website workshop, but anything that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear. You'd be able to share that our next virtual meeting on May 11th at 5 p.m. We're also going to be talking about the Best of the Delta 2021 proposed categories. If you're not aware, for 5 years now, Visit CA Delta has been running a survey for Best of the Delta, usually with anywhere from 13 to 15 categories, like, best burger and best winery and those kinds of things. For this 5th year, we're proposing 20 categories of all of the kind of like future or past popular categories, because we really want to try and support Delta businesses as much as possible this year. We know how hard it's been with the pandemic. We figured by extending the categories, we'd be able to get the word out a little bit more about everybody's favorite businesses and locations in the Delta. And we're going to talk about some other projects as well. We have some welcome signs that are being designed and put out through the Delta. We have a chapter update to the economic sustainability plan around recreation and tourism that has a lot of helpful information in it. We're going to be talking about updates regarding the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area, which is a great thing to talk about as well when you're trying to kind of build that sense of place with your customers. So if you're interested at all in joining the Delta Marketing Task Force, we hope that you will reach out to us It's a great group of people, and we're always working on good projects. We're also going to ask for any ideas around low-cost marketing efforts to support Delta tourism as a whole. Anytime we have an opportunity to support the Delta as a whole and get people out there, it's an opportunity to help support businesses and the Delta as all. We might be able to put some funding towards one or two low-cost marketing efforts here in the near future. So we'll have some discussions around that. So if you are interested, we hope you will join us. Reach out to me for that. My contact information is right here. You can email me or call me. If you have questions for Elisa, her email address and phone number are here as well, and we'll make sure to get all of this information out to you by email. So with that said, I just want to open up one more time. If anybody has any other questions, we are about 15 minutes ahead of schedule. So all right. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining us today. It looks like we have an extra 15 minutes to our evening, so I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. We'll get this information out for you tomorrow, and you can contact us anytime if you have any questions that arise from any of this. And we'll also send out information here real soon about joining the future workshops as well. And we really hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody.